Hi everyone, I'm a bit tired, sweaty, I'm wearing my scruffs today, but it's an exciting day because it's time to plant out my Jubaea Chilensis, which is a Chilean wine palm. I've had that particular plant since 2017, I bought it from Hardy Palms and it's stayed in that pot mainly because it's filled with soil and there's no chance that I should be able to repot it into anything bigger just because it weighs that much. But it's my favourite palm, it's a very tough, very hardy palm, and it's high time it was actually planted out into the ground. So firstly, let's look at the spot and the reason why I'm planting it today. It's a bit windy, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So, you might remember in my previous video, I talked about moving a bamboo from this spot here. Now, the reason for that, purely because I've got my bamboo walk this way, so there's lots of the bamboos in the line, and the soil down here, even though this was filmed in March, it is very dry. So realistically, it's not the perfect spot for bamboo, and it's also not a great spot for mixed sort of tropicals like bananas and cannas. They really like the moisture if they're going to grow well. But it's a great spot for some palms, and that's mainly because it's facing west. You might be able to see the sun setting over that way, which means that this area is going to have sun as it passes all the way around the sky that way. So it's really good sun, and also it's sheltered because behind me I've got the tree there and I've got the bamboos. So this area is going to have lots of shelter from the north and from the east, which are the main directions of those cold, freezing winds in winter. So in reality, I've got a spot with good drainage that's going to get good sun in summer and also protected during the winter. So it's a great spot for some plants that, whilst they're hardy, a bit of protection will help them looking really good, and they're going to grow really well with all that summer sun. Before I start then, let's look at the other plants in this bed and the master plan behind it. I did have a plan for the whole garden, purely because we actually bought the house back in March last year, but with all the lockdowns and COVID issues, alongside a lot of other issues, it was actually August before we moved in. So I had a lot of time to plan the garden out and to think about really which plants are going where. However, I think you've got to be open to evolve and change your plans, and sometimes it takes having a few plants in the ground to realise the right spots for others. To start at this side then, we've got an arbutus, which is a strawberry tree, and that one tends to grow a bit more compact. It's more there for the evergreen structure, those glossy green leaves, and hopefully it'll be a nice backdrop to the other palms I'm putting in. Next up is the monkey puzzle. Now, it is a bit close to the fence potentially, but there's enough room for the trunk, certainly for definitely over 50 years. And if you look in the top, you'll see at the minute it's currently sheltering a load of little ladybirds. So it does have some, environmental value. It's one of my favourite trees, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people don't like them, but for me personally, they really fit in with that prehistoric sort of vibe. I just like the spiky leaves, and I think it worked really well with feather palms. Moving down then, we've got the Trachycarpus. There's 3 there. I tend to like planting in 3s where I can. It just looks so impressive, and I think in a way it's a very natural sort of structure. Plants tend to work better in odd numbers rather than even ones. I don't know why, I think it's just the way our brains work. But there's Trachycarpus there, Euphorbia mellifera in the middle, which will get a nice dome shape. And moving on, we've got here, we've got a load of Formiums. They generally go from tall at the back through to the smaller ones at the front. So there's a 10-ax at the back, the variegated one, and then these are yellow wave, which is one of my favourite Formiums. It stays relatively small, maybe 2 or 3 feet high, but it's just a lovely colour, well behaved, and I'm using it throughout the garden. And here, if you see past all the weeds, I will eventually weed at some point soon, but what we've got is another Jubaea, and this is the plan. So we're going to have Jubaea 1 there, Jubaea 2 there, and looking up down the other end of the garden, roughly where this mound of turf is, that is where my big Jubaea palm is going to be. So rewinding back then, the actual plan is when you look down the garden, from here you're going to have 1, 2, 3 Jubaea type palms. So I think the potential is there to have a really nice triple of plants, and if you're going to do it properly, what better plant to have than a Jubaea? Now, I won't be planting these directly into the ground, and if you watch my last episode on raised beds, you'll probably guess that this is what I would recommend for feather palms. But how I'm going to do it this time is essentially dig a shallow hole into the ground, get this Jubaea into there, and for now I'm just going to mound the soil up around the sides just to keep the roots sort of happy until I bring my rocks in. You might have seen on my Instagram I got some really big granite boulders a bit back, and those will be forming the front to this. So the idea is it's like a massive rockery with a Jubaea prided place in the middle of it. They're really big boulders and want to be great for sitting on, so hopefully this will be a lovely spot to sit and take in some of that summer sun. Following that, I've got my Trachycarpus. Now, this is one of the taller Trachycarpus palms I've got, and it's got a stripped trunk, which means all the fibre has been removed. I did that myself a few years ago, and it's slowly started to fade now from a yellow through to a grey, and it'll eventually turn a sort of grey-brown colour with age. But with this particular palm, I know it's not to everyone's taste, but it had a really narrow, thin trunk anyway, so I really like the idea that stripping that fibre will create that sort of coconut palm, desert island palm type look. And to further emphasise that, I want to plant it at an angle. So the master plan is Jubaea just there, and the Trachycarpus will probably go somewhere there, leaning out this way into the garden. Behind me, I've got a tree fern planted at an angle, facing the other way, so it should create a nice sort of rhythm and symmetry in the garden. And then at the back, finally, I've got space for one more feather palm. Not a big one, well, we'll see, they all tend to grow in their own ways anyway. But my plan is to put a Butea there. Again, it's a lovely, dry, sheltered, sunny spot, so it seems a shame not to put a feather palm in there. And then the gaps in the middle, I'll fill with Formiums. I might put in a Trachycarpus princeps and some of my more succulents, agaves. We'll see how it goes. But the main thing is get the palms in first, get the rocks brought in around them, and then I'll see what planting gaps and opportunities I've got at that point. You wouldn't believe it's been a beautiful afternoon, but now it's just started to get cloudy and get a bit windy. Maybe it's the fact that I've stopped actually lifting stuff and started talking that I'm starting to feel a little bit cold. So it's time to get this Trachycarpus out of the way and get on with planting the Jubaea. This could go badly, it could fall over. I've actually dragged both these palms over here myself, which is something I'm sure I'll be proud to tell my kids one day, and they'll maybe either respect me or realise why I'm eventually in a wheelchair. So we'll see how it goes. So with that out the way, the main plan is lay the Jubaea on its side. It's in a big pot that I've got no chance of lifting or tipping off, so I want to tip the plant over onto its side, tap it a bit and see if I can pull that pot out from underneath. I know you can cut it off with a standing knife, but it seems a shame to waste a 160 litre pot. We'll see how it goes. nice and gentle. They are very slow growing, so I don't want to break too many leaves during this. It's actually harder than it looks, this. I couldn't drag the pot too much closer, otherwise it would be on a slope, so I'm having to do it a bit further away. It might take a bit of effort, but we're getting there. Yay! So that's it, the pot's off. I'll just give you a closer look at that plant and its root system. That was a bit of a battle. 160 litre pot, empty. So here's a Jubaea, and you can see this is one of the benefits of buying pot grown plants, absolutely full of roots. So this plant is not just a recent transplant, it's not been dug up recently, in which case it would have to settle into ground. It'd take a few years to settle in. This is a pot grown plant with a healthy root system, and this will start growing this spring. If I bought it as a new palm, I'd potentially wait until maybe late April or maybe before I planted it out, but because this has been potted outside for 4 years, it's absolutely fine. It's used to the UK weather, and it'll be better in the ground as soon as I can get it in. Obviously if the ground was frozen I would wait. So you can see it's already got quite a decent trunk on it. These plants can actually, well, eventually, probably in my lifetime we'll see, will develop a trunk that's wider than that whole root ball. They can actually get to about 1 metre or 1200 mil wide before they start to grow up. So they're really chunky, impressive looking palm. And this particular plant, it was 17 years old when I bought it, so it's just over 20 now, 21, 22. So it's one of the few plants that I would recommend buying large. In my previous videos I said it's worth buying Trachycarpus in a small size, but when it comes to feather palms, larger plants, you are buying time. It's worth the investment. Also, bigger plants are more hardy, so this plant should be able to take pretty much anything. Hopefully, most average winters can throw at it, and it won't need any protection. So let's get on with putting it in its final home. Max has come out to watch this momentous occasion. Or maybe not, he's just bored. And this is what he does every single time. He climbs on my shoulder and just likes to watch the garden from up there. I don't know. Right, come on Max, get down. What are we doing, Max? What are we doing? What are we doing? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Now, what I'm trying to do as I'm moving it is not disturb the roots too much. You might see advice when you're planting sort of more conventional plants that you should really untangle the root ball, but with palms you don't need to do that. And because the roots are quite fleshy and brittle, you might actually end up breaking some of the roots, which you don't want to do. If you wanted a how-to guide on how to move and plant palms without any kind of effort, then this is not the video for you. I'm not going to call this how to plant a Jubaea, it's just planting the Jubaea. Obviously with more people it'll be a lot easier, but it is what it is, and to be honest with you, I wanted to get it on video because it's going to be a plant that grows and hopefully will stay with the garden for a lot of years to come. So let's crack on again. So now the Jubaea is roughly in place, hopefully you can see how impressive it's going to be. When the sun comes through these leaves, I really like the sort of angular, blocky looks for leaves. They're not like a graceful palm with, you know, slowly flowing curves, but definitely a blocky, angular, really masculine looking plant. And hopefully it'll look great in the setting summer sun when we eventually get there. Now I'll just have one last look around it. I think the trunk needs moving slightly, and I'll try and do that without breaking many roots. I think that's looking about perfect now. As you can see, the monkey puzzle's at a lower level, but it'll eventually grow up in time and it'll be a nice sort of background. But the Jubaea, pride of place there, right in the middle. It's not in the walkway, but equally, it's not in the fence either. So, let's get some soil mounded up. So I should probably say the soil that I'm mounding around isn't anything special. It's mostly just garden soil. We're quite lucky here that we've got a very rich soil. It digs well and it doesn't stay too wet in winter. It's not proper clay, but it's not sand either. It's just a nice loamy mixture somewhere in the middle. So for that I am very lucky. What I have done is added some compost into it from old pots last year, and I've also added a bit of manure. So it's always going to have the good drainage because the plant's raised up, and those will just give some more nutrients to the palm. A lot of people think that palms are desert island trees, and they're not really. They do need moisture and they do need nutrients. They'll grow so much faster for it. So let's get it mounded up. I'll now fast forward it a little bit to save you watching me pile loads of earth around. I'll save you about 5 minutes here. There we go, 5 minutes to watch me mess around with the spade, absolutely saved. So what I've done is really just drag all the soil in and pack it in using the spade on my feet to gently press it against the roots. And the main thing at this stage is just to cover up those roots so they're not exposed to the air, because roots of any plant, when they're exposed to the air, the wind, they get dried out and they just die. So if they're covered up, it'll help keep the plant healthy and it'll be ready to grow as soon as the weather warms up. But what I'm going to do at some point in the next few weeks is bring the granite rocks. They'll go around the palm, in front of it, and they'll help create that massive sort of rockery. And when I say rockery, I mean it more in the sort of Chatsworth rockery sense. Something grand, something impressive, not in the sense of a few little tiny boulders with, you know, a couple of creeping plants on them. That's not really my style. So I'll bring the rocks in as soon as the ground dries up, hopefully in the next few weeks. At that point I'll fill around them with soil, and then it's time to get some more plants in. But at this stage, the next goal is get the Trachycarpus in the ground, get a Butea in this corner here, and we'll see how the bed's looking then. Thanks for watching.